This is part 4 in a series of presentations on standards in vital records. Previously, we looked at the HL7 CDA approaches to sending birth and deaths from EHRs to vital statistics. In this part, we'll look at the HL7 version 2 messaging approach. We've already seen the use case from the hospital to the jurisdiction vital records office using VRDR, a CDA approach. There's also a need to send information from jurisdiction vital records offices to the National Center for Health Statistics. NCHS in return sends ICD-10 codes and bridged race and ethnicity back to the jurisdictions. Both of those needs can be met with HL7 messaging. Currently, we use a batch process where records are accumulated in a batch file, sent to NCHS, processed and returned. ICD-10 codes are extracted back into the death database. The coded ICD-10 data is then available for epidemiologic use, but the batch process is time-consuming. Better would be a real-time approach where ICD-10 codes are received and returned as deaths are registered in the jurisdiction. This use case can be met with HL7 messaging. HL7 defines the version 2 standard to meet this type of use case. A trigger event is an event in healthcare in the real world that triggers the need for information to flow from one system to another. The occurrence of a trigger event causes an HL7 message to flow from one system to another, where the content of the message is specific to the trigger event that occurred. The receiving system sends an ACK or an acknowledgement, which is simply a brief message that says, "I got the information you sent." Some real-world trigger events include admission to the hospital, laboratory or medication orders, even death. Real-time with HL7, the HL7 message would carry death reporting to NCHS, the acknowledgements returned. Information can also flow the other way, as in the case of ICD-10 coding or bridged race and ethnicity. Here's an example of an HL7 version 2 message. It's a text file. It can be viewed in a text editor. The data elements are delimited by pipes, which are vertical bars. Each line in an HL7 version 2 message is a segment. A segment is identified by a 3-character code at the beginning that indicates the type of information in the segment. In this case, MSH includes information about the to, from, and the subject or type of the message. PID is patient identifying information. OBX, in this case for death certificates, are observations. In this case, OBX segments contain specific information on the death certificate, where data elements are identified by LOINC codes, where a LOINC code unambiguously identifies the type of information in the observation segment, in this case, a cause of death interval. All of the rules for content, format, and exchange of HL7 version 2 messages are in implementation guides. Here's an example of the version 2.6 implementation guide for vital records death reporting. Some advantages of the version 2 approach: it's widely adopted in healthcare because it's been around for nearly 20 years. Because of that, it's relatively easy to implement. Software and staff are available who are familiar with the standard. It's customizable. It can be customized to meet unique needs of specific interoperability exchanges. That's also a disadvantage. It's sometimes said that version 2 is a one-size-fits-none, as every interface has to be customized. It's a relatively loose standard where vendors don't always strictly adhere to the standard, and every time vendors stray from the standard, it reduces the advantage of using a standard. A couple of questions. Which of the following are characteristics of version 2 messages? Pipe delimited, they're text-based files, they're defined in implementation guides, or all of the above. The correct answer is all of the above. True or false? A trigger event is a real-world event in healthcare that creates a need for information to flow from one system to another. That is true. And that concludes part 4.